Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description.
A Crew for a King by Fallen Angel Codester. To become king of the pirates, you need a crew, and in order to reach his dream, Luffy will need all the help he can get. Extended crew story, slightly more serious Luffy. Adios.
I don't know how clear I had to be, Luffy said. I don't want to help you. Luffy, this really isn't the time for this, Nami replied. Get us off of this thing or destroy it. Nah. Big bro is being affected by something, Johnny hissed to Nejico and Sanji, who were standing near him. It has to be that symbol under his feet. It's the other woman, Vivi shouted from the service set. Ms. Golden Week is a portrait painter. She can make you feel any emotion with her paints. You sure found out a lot, Ms. Wednesday, the smaller girl said, palette in one hand and her other funneling crackers into her mouth. My paints can make anyone do as I wish. Right now, your captain is feeling a rather betraying black. Big bro, Johnny shouted, but Luffy didn't look at him at all. Step off of that thing underneath you. Nah, Luffy replied. Sanji said to himself. Hey, Luffy. Do us a favor and keep standing on that mark, okay? It'd be a great help. I don't listen to you, Luffy replied, stepping off of the symbol. As soon as he did, he looked around in a daze, looking confused. What was I doing? He asked. Helping us, Nami shouted. Oh, right. Luffy shouted. Gum gum. BWAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHA. Johnny gaped as Luffy fell to the ground, gasping for breath and laughing louder than he had ever heard him laugh before. It looked like he might even die from it. No good, Ms. Goldenweek said. Yellow is the color of fun. And he seems to be having a whole load of fun now. Luffy rolled around on the ground laughing as hard as he could, essentially taking him out of the fight. Johnny had spent too long watching him, and barely had time to block Ms. Valentine's swing as she came for him. The weight she gave the umbrella made the attack incredibly hard to block, but it was that or take the full brunt of it and get hurt again. Pay attention to your own fight, glasses, she said. She continued to whack at him with the umbrella, and it took everything Johnny had to evade her. Jumping back, he readied his blade in a piercing stance, having an idea. Sword of the Sea. Rippling tide, plunging forth with all his might, Johnny aimed for Ms. Valentine's chest. The attack was easily blocked by the umbrella, but he could hear it creak slightly. Not only this, but he watched as his force caused the woman to slide back slightly. He had been right after all. Almost had me, Ms. Valentine said with a smirk. Johnny only smirked back. I'll get you next time, he said. Using his might, Johnny quickly spun around the weapons and grabbed Ms. Valentine by the shoulder, and forced her to the ground with all his might. The woman impacted hard, causing her to cough as dust was thrown up. What the hell was that? She demanded. Johnny smirked. I heard what you said back at the last time we fought, he said. You said you weren't used to using your power on things. So I deduced that you couldn't do both yourself and the umbrella. Either you weigh more or it does, not both. You little, Johnny, look out. Johnny was blindsided as Nejico threw herself into his side, knocking both of them to the ground. An explosion sounded off mere seconds later, right where he had been standing. Looking up, he saw Mr. Five watching, looking angry. Get up, Ms. Valentine, he said. That pirate is a low-life nobody, don't lose to him. The woman nodded and got to her feet, readying her umbrella again. You okay? Nejico asked, still lying over Johnny as if there was some threat still. Yeah, I'm fine, he said. Any ideas? Johnny, you bastard, Sanji shouted. A fire lit in his eyes. How dare you take the time to try and seduce Nejico Swan on the battlefield? I'll get you for this. What is he talking about? Johnny asked, looking up at his quartermaster. She just looked annoyed. Ignore him and get up, she replied. The pair got to their feet and squared off with the agents again, everyone being quiet before the battle broke out once again. Looks like this battle ain't going our way, Usopp hissed to himself, watching from the bushes. He'd obeyed Luffy's order to stay back and provide cover, but now he wasn't sure what he had to do. Did he help Luffy, or the others with the other agents? But he had an even bigger question than that. Why the hell are you here too? He shouted angrily, glaring at Karoo cowering next to him. Aren't you gonna help save Vivi, you useless bird? Karoo just quacked at him, making Usopp sigh. I get it, he said. Fighting like this is scary. I don't like it either. I should thank Nijiko for buying me this rifle. After all, from this distance. Usopp grinned as he loaded in his own ammo, and aimed the rifle squarely at Ms. Golden Week. I can save my captain just like she said, exploding shot. The sound of a gunshot followed up by an explosion caused everyone on the field to pause. Ms. Golden Week cried out in pain, falling away from the picnic she was having with Luffy. Her palette and brush lay destroyed near her. Another shot rang out, and Luffy caught on fire. The captain's agonized cries made everyone watch for a fair amount of time, before finally he appeared from the inferno shirtless. Coincidentally, also without the marks that had been drawn on him. Finally, he shouted angrily, "Now I can save the others." "TCH," Mr. 5 said. "And to think our superior agents went down first." The man reached into his coat and drew a gun. One Johnny had never seen before. He aimed it into the bushes, firing off a bunch of shots. The shots exploded just like every other part of the man, but this one was punctuated with Karoo crying out from the flames. He appeared shortly thereafter carrying a wounded Usopp, somehow still conscious. "Big bro Usopp," he shouted frantically, "are you okay?" "Just barely," Usopp replied. Have we saved the others?" Usopp's question caused everyone to look towards the service set, and their eyes widened. The 4 crew members had finally turned to wax completely, unmoving and quiet. "Damn it!" Luffy hissed. "Are we too late?" "You may as well be." Johnny turned and watched, mouth agape, as a massive wax thing appeared from the jungle. It appeared to resemble a boxer, and had Mr. 3 controlling it at the top. "Now, I'll defeat you with my wax champion move. Ms. Golden Week, paint me a cool color." "Can't," the girl replied from her position near her palette. "They destroyed my paints." "What?" Mr. 3 asked in disbelief. "Damn pirates. Just how pitiful are you lot?" "You went down first," Ms. Valentine pointed out. "Luffy," Sanji called. The captain looked to his cook, who had lit a new cigarette. "You're taking the wax guy the first, presume?" "Of course." "I'll take the explosion dude." "Johnny, Nijiko Swan, you two can take her right." "Of course," Nijiko said, raising her pistols. "Sanji, get me that guy's pistol. I want it." "I'll fulfill my duty, big bro Sanji," Johnny shouted as he raised his sword again. Sanji grinned as he turned to Usopp. "And you can find a way to free our friends, Usopp," he said. "If everyone's cool with that, let's get going." Without waiting, Sanji rushed at Mr. 5, who stood waiting without a care in the world. His kicks easily connected, but the explosions that followed sure were a pain in the neck. "Listen buddy," Sanji said as he jumped backwards. "My beautiful Nijiko Swan wants your pistol, so I'm going to need you to hand it over." "Ah, you mean this pistol?" Mr. 5 asked as he took it out again. "How about I give you a full demonstration?" Before he could ask what that meant, he had to watch the man load the pistol with his own boogers. "That is vile," Sanji said. "How dare you do that to Nijiko Swan's new gun?" "I'll do whatever I want with my gun," the man replied, aiming it at Sanji. Growling, he charged for the man with everything he had, dodging the shots as they flew at him. They just barely missed every time, but the blast still singed his back a bit. "Collier!" Sanji twisted and aimed his foot at the Mont's neck, but Mr. 5 dodged. He used the momentum to swing his own leg at him, expel him. The kick may have missed, but the explosion still hit him dead on. Not one to be outdone, Sanji recovered quickly and rushed back at Mr. 5. Flanche! The midsection kick hit its target, making Mr. 5 double over in pain. Sanji didn't give him any room to breathe, getting closer and kicking him high into the air. The man recovered and fired more boogers at him, which he dodged to the best of his ability. The man landed again and laughed. "Are you just going to run away from me the whole time?" he asked. Sanji just chuckled. Says the guy with the gun. Running at him again, Sanji had a plan this time. Waiting for a few of the shots to be fired, he spun and kicked for the Mont's outstretched hand. Just as he planned, the pistol was sent flying, and he jumped to catch it before Mr. 5 could. He smiled as he landed, twirling the gun in his hand. "Nice toy," he said with a smirk. My Nijiko swan appreciates your gift. Mr. 5 growled, readying himself for close quarters fighting. You pirates really don't know how to quit. Karoo rode Usopp into the nearby bushes as the fighting recommenced, everyone taking on their designated fighter. But he didn't need to focus on that right now. Right now he needed to free their friends. Surely there was an opening, right? Finally, he decided on watching how Mr. 3 fought. Surely Luffy could show him an opening that he could exploit, right? The Wax Champion and Straw Hat Captain exchanged vicious blows. Luffy clearly the underdog. For a while the pair just beat each other's faces in, but before long he saw something. As Mr. 3 went to manipulate the wax, the top of his hair caught on fire. The wax poured out and attacked Luffy, who dodged it. That was it. Fire. I better get a banquet in my honor for all the work I'm doing. He hissed to himself, Karoo watching him stuff his ammo into the gun. Once he'd gotten it in, he took aim for Nami, aiming right at her stomach. Sorry Nami. Please don't hate me. Just like before, the gunshots caused the entire battle to freeze. No one looked for where Usopp had fired from. What wasn't important. What was important was the service set, starting with Nami, had caught fire. Just like her, Yosaku, Vivi and Zoro also caught fire, burning up along with the set. Usopp, what the hell are you doing? Sanji shouted as he glared at the sniper. What if you burn Vivi Schwan or Nami Swan's precious skin? Fire melts wax. Usopp shouted in his own defense. I'm saving them, you're welcome. You bastard, Mr. 3 shouted as he bore down on Usopp, who screamed in a panic. How dare you destroy my service set, I'll kill you. Ah no you don't. Sanji watched as Luffy jumped on top of the Wax Champion, pulling at Mr. 3's hair. Usopp, shoot this guy too. The sniper looked confused at first, but he nodded and loaded his gun again. With another shot the center of the wax body caught on fire. Mr. 3 started to panic from within, but Luffy didn't give him the chance to harden it again. Gum Gum Bazooka. His hands easily cut into the softened wax, connecting with Mr. 3. The man was forcibly ejected from the body, flying right into a nearby tree and breaking it. Looks like we're wrapping this up, huh? Sanji asked, rubbing his neck. Before Mr. 5 could react, Sanji had already leapt into the air. Muton shot. The man hadn't prepared in the slightest for his flurry of kicks to connect with his face. He too flew backwards and into a tree, leaving only Ms. Valentine standing. The woman clicked her teeth as she looked around, clearly irritated. This is insane, she said. I'm out of here, not likely. Seeing as Big Bro Usopp ruined your umbrella, Johnny said with a smirk. Ms. Valentine glared at him before she smirked. As if I need that thing to escape, she shouted. Before anyone could do anything, she took a running start and leapt into the air, floating off away from the crew as she began to descend slowly. Until Broggy blocked her path. The giant looked positively livid as he wrapped his hand around the woman, who looked terrified. How dare you interrupt our honor-bound duel? He boomed. Raising his hand high above his head, he spiked Ms. Valentine down into the dirt, making the entire island shake. The woman now lay at the bottom of a crater, unmoving. In the blink of an eye Vivi, Zoro, Nami and Yosaku appeared from the flames, burnt a bit but alive. Who the hell lit us on fire? Nami shouted, shirtless. Sanji could barely hear Usopp's cries over the sound of angels singing in his ears as he stared at his own princess. Rounding up the Baroque Works agents wasn't too hard seeing as all save Ms. Goldenweek was unconscious, and she seemed pretty willing to cooperate. There wasn't much to tie them up with, so some vines would have to do for now. Not like it mattered anyway, they'd be leaving soon enough. This is a cool little pistol, Nijiko said as she played with the gun she'd taken from Mr. 5. From what Usopp had told her, it was a new model out of the South Blue, capable of firing 6 shots very quickly. She was going to use this to her own advantage, definitely. At Usopp's request she'd handed over one of her old pistols. He said he had an idea for it, so she had no issues in handing it over. If Usopp's custom ammo was any indication, he could be trusted with mods. Granted, her joy was undercut by Broggy's crying. Big Bro Broggy, Yosaku shouted, still not wearing a shirt for some reason after it had been singed off by Usopp's flames. I feel your pain. To win the duel like this, Usopp shouted, this is unforgivable. Would you lot shut up already? Dory asked, walking up to them cradling his wounds. Everyone gasped as he sat down, Broggy looking the most surprised. "Dory," he shouted as he embraced his friend, "you're alive." "Of course I am," Dory mumbled. "Our weapons are nowhere near sharp enough to kill me with one strike." "Weapons?" Luffy asked. Broggy too looked confused before his eyes widened. "Of course," he boomed. "100 years of fighting will surely dull a weapon." Dory nodded at this, looking down at the gash across his front. "You barely cut me at all," he said pointedly. "It hurts, but it's not deep." "Still," Vivi muttered. "Those people came here because of me, and you guys got hurt." "Oh stop it," Nami said, smacking the princess on the top of the head lightly, taking a break from using Sanji due to her shirtless dilemma. "If they came here, that means someone sure is mad that you're on the move. Take it as a compliment." "And we won anyway," Luffy shouted happily. "Let's have a rice cracker party to celebrate." Nejico watched as the captain tossed crackers to everyone, who looked confused. "Where did you get these?" Johnny asked as he bit into his. "That small girl we beat up had them," Luffy replied as he stuffed his face with them. "Hey Luffy, share," Usopp shouted. "You have more than us." "I'm the captain, I get the most of the loot." "Still," Zoro said as the two argued, "I doubt those will be the last agents we encounter. After all, the last thing Baroque Works wants is Vivi to make it home." "We'll deal with them when they come for us," Nejico said as Yosaku too attempted to take more crackers from Luffy. "For now, we should leave. Who knows when those three will wake up, and we should be gone when they do. And with the time it takes to store a log, we have no choice but to use Ms. All Sunday's eternal pose." Nami agreed. "So we should get going." Nejico saw her sister flinch slightly and whack at her stomach, but she just assumed a bug had bitten her. It was likely, seeing as they were in the middle of a jungle. "So you'll be leaving?" Broggy asked, making the crew look back at the giants. "Yep, we gotta get going," Luffy said from atop both Yosaku and Usopp. "We'd love to stay longer but we can't." Dory said. "Then allow us to see you off from the shore. We will meet you there." "Wait," Usopp shouted as both giants stood up. The sniper smiled up at them. "I just want to thank you guys for what you showed me, a proud warrior of the seas, and how you have to fight for your pride no matter what. I won't forget what I saw here today." Both watched Usopp quietly before breaking out in booming laughter. "Our friend sure is funny, Broggy," Dory shouted. "He is indeed," Broggy said. "Do not fear, Usopp. One day you will become a brave warrior just like us. You sure helped us today too. We thank you for that." Usopp laughed as well as the giants left, leaving the crew to themselves. "Oh, I almost forgot," Nejico said as their schedule flooded back to her. "We still need some more meat. Let's kill more dinosaurs on the way back to Mary." "Yes," Luffy cheered. "Dino tastes awesome." And so with this the Straw Hats began the walk back to the Going Merry, after correcting Zoro's course and assuring Nami she wouldn't be eaten, of course. Far away from Little Garden, in the country of Alabasta, another situation was developing. In this office sat Ms. All Sunday, who was near a banana gator that was resting peacefully. The woman watched quietly as her boss once again dialed the transponder snail, looking downright pissed off. "Problem, Mr. Zero?" she asked with a small smirk at his irritation. The warlord looked back at her. "Don't sass me, Ms. All Sunday," he threatened, "or I'll kill you too." "Whatever has you so mad?" she asked, ignoring the threat. He wouldn't kill her, not yet. "Mr. 3 isn't answering," he replied as he growled at the silence again. He hung up and puffed at his cigar to calm himself down. "I explicitly told him I'd be contacting him to give him orders." "Perhaps he's been defeated," she suggested. "If he has, I'll kill him," he replied. "He'd better answer soon, or else I'll send Mr. 2 to eliminate him." "A bit rash, don't you think?" she asked. Crocodile rolled his eyes and turned his eat away from her, puffing his cigar again. "I'm not a fan of loose ends. Mine are clearly bigger." "You're dreaming, Marimo." Vivi watched the swordsman and cook argue about the size of the dinosaurs they'd killed, unable to accept they were the same size. While they did so, Johnny and Yosaku stood off to the side, waiting to slice the meat up for transport. While this was happening, Nami was checking to make sure they had enough space for it all, while everyone else just waited around lazily. She took this moment to really come to terms with what was happening around her. At first, it hadn't been her favorite idea to travel with nameless savages to her home like they were supposed to be her guards. Pirates were pirates, so they were obviously up to something when they agreed to help. And yet, even with Nami wanting money from her, the Straw Hats were clearly genuine in their want to help her. They were unlike anything she had ever seen before in a pirate crew. Much less pirates than a group of friends just traveling the seas together. Sure, they still had roles, but they weren't strict or unfriendly in any way. All in all, it just confused her. They were just nice people. "Would you morons shut up already?" Nami asked as she leaned over the railing. "We don't have any more room. Ditch those carcasses and get on." "Mine are bigger though, Nami Swan," Sanji shouted happily. "Tell him he's full of it," Zoro said. Nami sighed and leaned her head on the railing, her face looking flushed. "Shut up already, both of you," she hissed. Both men looked at the navigator quietly, before grumbling and getting on board the ship. After everyone had calmed down, the ship slowly began sailing down the channel, clearly intent to exit into the Western Sea. "I wonder where Dory and Bragi are," Usopp said. "It's not hard to figure out," Zoro replied, gesturing forward. A simple glance would tell anyone that the giants were waiting to see them off, standing at the edge of the island. "Hello friends," Bragi said, face looking serious. "We've come to see you off as promised." "And we also have a warning," Dory said. "No matter what happens, and no matter what you see, keep moving forward." "Got it," Luffy shouted. "We keep forward, what did they mean by that?" Yosaku asked weakly as Mary laced out of the river and back onto the open ocean. "I have a feeling we'll find out," Nijiko replied. Just as Luffy promised, the ship stayed forward in its path, and it didn't take long before the ocean underneath them began to rumble. "I think that might be what they were talking about," Sanji said, watching as a gigantic goldfish came forth from the ocean. The fish stared down at them like they were a snack, and Vivi could practically feel her life flashing before her eyes. "We need to get out of here," Johnny shouted in panic. "Big bro Luffy, give us the order." "No," Luffy replied. Turning to look, Vivi noted the captain looked slightly worried himself. "I said we'd stay forward, so we stay forward." Right into a giant monster's mouth, Vivi shouted, the goldfish now waiting to eat them up. Luffy didn't give an order, and soon enough the ship passed into its mouth. "We're so dead," Nami cried, chewing on a rice cracker Luffy had given her. Luffy just laughed. "We're fine," he said. "It's like Laboon." "This is completely different," Johnny and Yosaku shouted together. "Still, they must have known this would happen," Nijiko said, her voice echoing in the dark. "I wonder what they're due." Nijiko was cut off as a massive burst of air came forth, accompanied by the light returning to them. Once her eyes had readjusted, Vivi saw that they had returned onto the open sea. Turning back to look, she saw that Dory and Bragi had torn a literal hole through the monster, freeing them from the stomach of the beast. From what she could see though, they had broken their weapons in the process. "Good luck friends," Bragi shouted as he waved to them. "May Elbaf's gods bless you with luck." "That was incredible," Usopp shouted, tears coming from his eyes. "They're so strong they can cut monsters and the sea itself with just the wind." "We'll miss you big bros," Johnny and Yosaku shouted off the edge of Mary. "Thank you for helping us." "That was amazing," Vivi said in barely a whisper. "They cut through that thing like paper." "I wonder how they stack up to other warriors from Elbaf," Zoro asked with a smirk on his face. "I bet they'd be fun to fight with weapons in good condition." "Let's just get out of here before something else happens," Nami said. "Johnny, take the rudder. Yosaku, man the sails. A tailwind is about to hit us." "Wah! What happened?" Mr. 3 asked as he finally felt his consciousness returning. "We got beaten," he heard Ms. Goldenweek say somewhere nearby. Finally coming to completely, he looked up to take in the situation. He and Ms. Goldenweek were tied up by vines to Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine, both of them also conscious. "They got us completely," Mr. 5 hissed. "Those damn pirates. How did we let this happen?" Ms. Valentine shouted. "They're a bunch of nobodies. We underestimated even the lesser of their crew," Mr. 3 hissed. "That damn sniper destroyed everything I built for that fight." "He destroyed my paints too," Ms. Goldenweek replied with a pout, "and they stole my crackers." "Those two swordsmen were pretty annoying as well," Ms. Valentine said. "Which sea did they come from again?" That wasn't anything I was ready for? Could this actually get any worse? Mr. 3 asked weakly. Not only had he failed on his direct orders from Mr. 0, but they'd been humiliated by being allowed to live. What the hell were they going to do? I think it could, Mr. 5 grunted. Take a look. Mr. 3 made a face and looked over in confusion, wondering what the man had seen. It was the unluckies watching them quietly. Gah, he shouted. It can get worse, freeing themselves from the vines. The agents got to their feet as the otter and vulture watched them, before they attempted to fly off. Not a chance, Mr. 5 shouted. Taking aim with a booger, the man exploded the unluckies, causing them to fall back down to earth. Candle luck, Mr. 3 said, trapping the pair before they could attempt another escape. The agents walked up to the pair and watched them quietly, while the other two began to sweat. What do we do now? Ms. Valentine asked. Mr. 0 will still find out we let them get away. Mr. 3 frowned as he stared down at the unluckies, trying to figure out what they were going to do. Before long, he managed to formulate a plan. I know what we'll do, he said. Digging into the pack the unluckies had, he found the eternal pose to Alabasta he figured would be there. Walking away, he headed back towards the wax hut he had created before. The others followed behind quietly, not quite sure what he was up to. Once they reached the cabin and entered, they could hear the transponder snail ringing. Steeling himself, Mr. 3 cleared his throat and answered. Mr. 3? A rugged voice came through immediately. Mr. 0, he greeted as confidently as he could. What does me the honor? Cut the crap. I told you I'd be calling. Why did it take you so long to answer me? Ah, my apologies, Mr. 0. Those pirates got themselves lost in the jungle of Little Garden, and some giants were also having a fight. Not to mention the lovely princess was hiding from us. But not to worry, we've made sure their journey ended here. Is that so? Indeed. The princess was oh so sad, and her tears nearly moved me, but I did my job and ended her. Excellent work. Did you see the unluckies? I did. They have an eternal pose for you. Come to Alabasta and meet with me. It is time for us to take what we want. I'm getting off the line now, I don't need the Navy hearing this. Yes, sir. See you then. The line was cut off, and Mr. 3 allowed himself to take a deep breath of relief. He'd lied his way through for now. He hadn't expected the boss to give off such an aura. Now what? Mr. 5 demanded. That was a lie. I know it was. Mr. Threg to chase those damn pirates down. We need to kill them before they reach Alabasta. And how do we do that? Ms. Goldenweek asked. We use my boat, Mr. 3 said. And we track down those pirates and end them. If we don't kill them before they get to Alabasta, we can't even face the boss. Look at this situation you've put us in, Ms. Valentine said. I think I'd rather die. We can do this, Mr. 3 replied. We won't underestimate those pirates again. We'll make sure they don't make it there. Drum Island is nearby here, Ms. Goldenweek said. We'll have trouble finding it without a regular log pose, but if it snows it should get easier. So we have to navigate to an island we don't have a log for, to track down pirates who are way too strong, to save our lives against our even stronger boss? Ms. Valentine asked. Yes, Mr. 3 replied. Exactly. Great, sounds like fun. What is this? Dory asked, picking up the small creatures trapped in wax. I'm not sure, Broggy replied, but I bet they taste good. Ahaha. I bet they do. Let us taste them before our next duel. Come on Johnny, get the sail right. I'm sorry, big sis Najiko. Johnny shouted from up above. The wind is making it hard. Well, furl it a bit. Najiko watched as the swordsman did as instructed, which allowed him to correct the sails much quicker. There ya go. You got it, good job. Now that they had corrected into the wind, it looked like they could relax a bit. The rest of the crew was kind of spread out aboard the ship, no one really doing anything important. Yosaku was up against the side of the ship, shirtless and panting. You okay, Yosaku? She asked him, noting his flushed face. He nodded with a weak smile. Yeah, my burns are just hot under the sun, he said. I'll be okay. Najiko frowned at this. Go on inside, she said, gesturing towards the cabin. Take some rest, you look terrible. Nonsense, big sis Najiko, he said as he tried to stand. I can help, give me something to do. I just did, Nijiko replied with a smile as he put a hand on his shoulder. That was an order from your quartermaster. Go and rest. I don't want to work you to death. Yosaku looked ready to argue, but it was clear he felt too sickly to do so. So with that he turned and walked towards the cabin, stumbling a bit as he did so. Nijiko watched him worriedly for a bit, but eventually left him be and turned away. She could see Nami leaning up against the mast of the ship, watching the eternal pose quietly. You okay? She asked as she walked up to her sister. Nami looked up at her and nodded, despite looking sickly too. Yeah, just making sure we're on course. Geez Nijiko, I'm really not feeling good. Nijiko frowned and placed a hand on her sister's head, recoiling in surprise. You're burning up, she said. You're sick with something. Am I? Nami asked weakly. I guess I do feel pretty bad. You and Yosaku both. Go and take a rest. I can watch the pose. Nami nodded and handed over the eternal pose, standing to leave. Just make sure we're following right ahead, she said as she walked towards the cabin. We'll make it to Alabasta if you do. Nijiko turned as her sister stopped talking, and her eyes widened. Nami, she shouted, rushing to her sister as she lay face down on the deck. Nami, are you okay? Nami? She was getting no response from her sister, and this only worried her more. Guys, we have a problem. Nami just collapsed. What? Luffy asked as he bounded off of Mary's head towards them. Is she okay? I don't know, but she's burning up, Nijiko replied. We need to get her into bed and see if we can help her. Without saying another word, Luffy picked the navigator up in his arms, making his way towards the cabin. Just as they reached the door, Sanji poked his head out. Yosaku just collapsed in here, he said flatly. He said he was exhausted, so I'll make him. What the hell happened to Nami Swan? Get out of the way, Luffy replied as he shoved past the cook. She's sick with something. As the crew funneled into the cabin, Nijiko tasked Zoro with watching their direction. Johnny picked up Yosaku and together they carried them both to the same room. Nami of course got her bed, but Yosaku was kind of tossed onto the couch. Wet towels were applied to both foreheads, and now the crew just sat in relative confusion. Are they okay? Vivi asked weakly from beside Karoo, who also looked upset. Nijiko watched the thermometer in her sister's mouth warily, watching it rise higher and higher. 40 degrees? She asked in disbelief. Usopp, what's Yosaku running? Same thing, the sniper replied as he stared at the other thermometer. What's happening? Johnny shouted. Are they gonna die? I don't know, Nijiko replied weakly as she reapplied the towel to Nami. But their fevers are far too high to just be a normal flu. Don't we have anyone here with medical experience? Vivi asked. Nijiko turned around just in time to see the whole crew looking at her. What, me? She asked. Sure, I helped the doctor back home a lot, but I'd barely call myself a doctor. We can find one in Alabasta, right? Usopp asked. We could wait. It'll take a week at least to get there, Vivi replied weakly. What if they don't have that long? Is it that bad? Luffy asked. More than certainly yes. Nijiko replied as her worry bubbled up. What do we do? No one said anything for a moment, unsure of the answer. It was Nami who broke the silence. We don't have time, she hissed as she sat up, taking the towel off her head. We have to get to Alabasta. Don't be a moron, Nijiko hissed as she tried to force her sister back down. You need to rest. No, I can't, Nami replied. Vivi, check the drawer over there. You'll find out what I mean. Vivi went for the drawer that Nami had pointed out, pulling out a newspaper. All it took was her reading the title to see what Nami meant. 300,000 royal guards defected? She asked in disbelief. This can't be real. The odds just flipped in the rebels' favor. Which means we have even less time now, Nami said. We have to hurry and get to Alabasta or else all those people will fight for nothing. Nami, Nijiko tried as her sister got up to leave. Nami, come back here. The crew chased after the navigator as she went topside, trying to convince her not to. Despite their pleas, she began bossing Zoro around for his negligence, then commanding them to turn the ship around. Nami, you need to relax, Luffy said with a worried frown. You're not okay. Yes, I am, Nami replied. Now turn the damn ship around. Despite the pleas from the crew, they begrudgingly did as she asked and began to turn the ship around, turning them away from where they had been heading. Things are going so bad, Johnny hissed. What could possibly happen next? Everyone. The crew turned as Vivi exited the cabin, looking down at all of them. I know I'm asking a lot of you, but after what I just read I need to get home as soon as possible. See? Nami asked. I knew she'd want that. We don't have time to help me. Which is why we're going to find Nami and Yosaku a doctor as soon as possible. Huh? Nami asked. Good decision. Luffy shouted. Nami's faster when she's feeling good. Nijiko was there to catch her sister as she collapsed again, whose fever felt even worse. I'm saying I'm fine. Stop acting so tough, you're bad at it. Nijiko advised with a weak smile. Come on, let's get you down below. What the hell is that? Usopp shouted. Nijiko turned and watched in disbelief as a cyclone took over the sea behind them, right where they had been about to go. How the? Vivi asked. The Grand Line's weather is bad enough, but to be able to predict it so well. Nijiko knew what the princess was saying. She looked down at her sister with a wave of pride for her. You're really amazing, you know that, Nami? Ms. All Sunday. Ms. All Sunday looked up at Mr. Zero called for her. He seemed irritated, and that in turn made her smirk. Wha now? She asked. He seemingly ignored her snark and glared at her. Contact Mr. 2, get him to patrol the seas around Alabasta. I want to know if Mr. 3 was lying to me. Whatever makes you think that? She asked. He took far too long to answer me, he replied. I'm not a fan of loose ends. If Mr. 2 finds those pirates, I will kill those morons myself. Ms. All Sunday just chuckled at this, thinking back to the look Monkey D. Luffy had given her when she'd visited them. Do whatever you wish. The next day or so the going merry was in complete disarray. Nami and Yosaku being sick meant that their navigation was weak at best, and horrific at worst. Yosaku being down meant that they had lost a body to man the sails or rudders should they need him, which made things a little harder. Not only that, but Luffy had tasked Nijiko with keeping an eye on both of their sick members, as she was the only one with really any medical experience. This meant that for the past 24 hours their quartermaster was down below too, so the operation topside was weak. They needed to find a doctor, or else they would be in serious trouble. Luffy didn't know how serious the fevers were, but from what Nijiko had said it was really bad that the fevers were so high. He'd never really been sick before, so he'd have to take her word on that. Even so, he could see that Nami and Yosaku were suffering. How are we doing? He asked as the Merry sailed through the quiet sea. We're fine, Usopp replied, eyes glued to the ocean ahead of them. Should I keep an eye on the eternal pose? Luffy frowned at this. Forcing Nami and Yosaku to wait until they got to Alabasta wasn't a good idea, but they had no logs saved for any other island nearby. I guess, he finally replied as he turned to enter the cabin. I'll see how those two are doing. Okay. Leaving the sniper to his impromptu orders, Luffy entered the Mary's cabin and made his way for the female quarters, which had been turned into a makeshift sick ward due to not wanting to move either of their crew members. He'd forced Nijiko to sleep somewhere else last night as well, not wanting to expose her to both sickness so much. They didn't know if she could catch it, but the last thing they needed was for her to get sick too. Reaching the door he was looking for, he knocked to signal his entrance, opening the door. Looking in, he could see Nijiko sitting next to Nami, looking down at her sister. How are they? He asked as they walked in. Nijiko didn't reply to this, still looking at Nami. Nijiko? Are they okay? There was more silence, but the quartermaster sighed. Change the cloth on Yosaku's head, she said. Luffy turned to his side to see the suffering swordsman. Noting the cloth looked dry, he did as he was told, wetting the cloth and reapplying it to his head. The man didn't respond, just kind of weakly groaning and making a face. Okay, done, he said. Now could you answer my question? They're bad, was the response he got. At this point I don't think either of them can even respond to us if we ask them something. I've been doing my best to keep their fevers down, but it's barely helping. What could have caused this? He asked. Why are only these two sick? Any ideas? No, if it was something airborne we likely would have been infected too, but it seems not to be, because I feel fine. Luffy made a face at this, trying to remember what his grandpa had told him about avoiding diseases. Did something bite them? He asked. I remember when I was young my grandpa told me to make sure the wolves didn't break my skin, cause they might give me radio or something. Rabies, Captain. Nijiko clarified. And I'm not really sure if they were bitten, but Nijiko's eyes widened before she could finish her sentence. Without waiting, she lifted up Nami's blankets, and then her shirt. There, on her abdomen, was a dark red mark. The area looked more swollen and sickly than the rest of Nami, which was odd. Nijiko's frown deepened. What's that? Luffy asked. A bug bite, Nijiko replied. Nami was bitten by something on Little Garden, and I'm willing to bet that Yosaku was too. Judging by where the bite is, it's because Usopp's fire burned through their clothes. Don't tell him that though. Luffy had no intention of sharing that anyway. This is still bad, but now I might be able to help some more. Get me some alcohol. Doing as he was instructed, Luffy quickly returned with a bottle he'd pilfered from the kitchen. Watching intently, Nijiko wet another piece of cloth with the alcohol, before rubbing it into Nami's wound. The redhead flinched in her sleep, but didn't move much. What's that do? Luffy asked, curious. Alcohol can kill bacteria, Nijiko replied. It's better to apply it sooner, but at the very least this might help them feel a little better. Moving, the de facto medic applied the alcohol to Yosaku's infected area as well, which they had to search before finding it on his back. Is that all we can do? Luffy asked, hoping they could have helped more. Nijiko nodded. Yes, for now. Until we find an actual doctor, they'll likely stay this way or worse, so we need to hurry. Luffy nodded, turning to return to the upper deck and see how things were going. Luffy. He paused as the quartermaster said his name. She was watching him warily, looking very serious. What? He asked. Whenever we reach the next island, we need to find a permanent doctor. A real one, that'll come with us. We can't have another situation like this again. I'm already worried they won't make it, but next time it might be worse. So we need to find a real doctor. If we can't, I don't know how safe I feel continuing this journey. This was not something Luffy wanted to hear. Although he knew he wasn't bright, he knew enough to know Nijiko was threatening to leave. Perhaps not threatening, but warning him. Saying that she wouldn't be comfortable continuing on with him if things went this way again. The last thing he wanted was to lose one of his crew, even more so Nijiko, who had been incredibly reliable in the 2 or so weeks she'd been with them. After all, he hadn't the faintest clue up until 3 minutes ago that alcohol could help with wounds. I understand, he said. Don't worry, we'll find a doctor, and both of them will recover. I promise you that. His words didn't seem to soothe her much, but she nodded anyway. Turning, he left the room and made his way topside again, snow hitting his face as he did so. It had been getting cold recently, and snow had also been hitting the deck. Ah, there you are, Luffy, Usopp said. Can you tell Zoro he's insane? Zoro, you're insane, Luffy said with a smile as he looked up towards the swordsman in the crow's nest. Shut up, Luffy. The man replied irritably. I'm telling you guys, there's someone standing on the water. That makes no sense, crazy man. Usopp replied. How can someone stand on the water? And why would they be out here in the middle of no? Big bro, Zoro's right, Johnny shouted from the bow of the ship, wrapped up in a blue jacket to protect himself from the cold. There's a man standing on the water. Confused, the man ran forth to see it for themselves. Sure enough, there was a man standing on the water in front of them. He just watched them quietly, making Luffy frown. Hi, he said. Hi, the man replied. Looks like it's cold today. Luffy replied, unsure of what to say. It sure is. Before anyone had a chance to say anything else, the water in front of the Mary exploded, which sent every member of the crew to the deck in surprise. Gathering himself quickly, Luffy looked up to find that a ship of all things had burst out of the water in front of them, with the man that had been standing on the water actually in the crow's nest. What just happened? Johnny asked weakly. I don't know, Luffy replied. That ship is so cool though. Shut up, Luffy, we're being boarded, Usopp cried in a panic. What the hell are those morons doing? Nijiko hissed as the ship settled back into the water. Whatever the rest of the crew had just done had nearly capsized them, but they were okay now. Quickly making sure both Nami and Yosaku were okay, the girl grabbed her jacket and threw it on as she went for the door, looking to see what was happening. What she got was Luffy being consumed by some dude with a huge mouth and everyone else watching in confusion. Sanji had a gun at his head. Johnny was locking swords with someone, and Zoro was just watching while Vivi and Karoo did the same from beside her. Washi asked weakly. We got boarded by some idiots looking for a pose to somewhere. Zoro replied, sounding uninterested. Now Luffy's being chewed. That did seem to be the case. Luffy was currently being chewed by Big Mouth, who made a face as he tried to eat her captain. This guy is really rubbery, he said, not a good taste at all. Get the hell. Luffy's voice came from inside his mouth, off of my ship. Luffy's outstretched arms rocketed back towards the man chewing on him, which sent the man flying right off of the broken side of the Mary and way away from the fight. The Mont's crew watched him in shock, as if they couldn't believe they just saw that. Lord Wapple, one shouted. He can't swim. Retreat, another, this one with an afro, shouted. We need to save Lord Wapple. The entire crew aboard the Mary immediately began to retreat, but no one gave them an easy time doing so. Luffy and the others harassed them the entire time, sending a few more flying and hurting them as they retreated and quickly sailed away, right in the direction of their lord. Soon enough, despite the utter chaos, the Mary once again grew silent. Can someone please explain what I missed being downstairs playing nurse? Nijiko demanded. It was so weird, big sis Nijiko. Johnny shouted. This guy was standing on the water, at least we thought he was. He was actually on his submerged ship, which came up and attacked us. That prick ate Mary. Luffy shouted angrily, standing over to the side. Nijiko turned to see that a massive chunk of the side missing. She really had missed a lot. I'll never forgive him. Ignore it, Sanji replied as he lit a cigarette. You sent him flying, so we'll probably never see him again. He said he was trying to get to Drum Island, Vivi said as she joined the conversation. Heard of it? Zoro asked her, the princess nodding. I have, she said. It's a winter island, and judging from the stabilizing weather it has to be nearby. They'll definitely have a doctor for Nami and Yosaku. So we have to find Drum, then. Luffy said. Sounds like a plan. Usopp, keep your eyes out for an island. Everyone else, man the sails or whatever. Have someone else tell us what to do, Captain. Zoro said with a smirk. Nijiko is way better at it than you are. Then tell us what to do, Nijiko, Luffy replied with a laugh. Nijiko couldn't help but smile a bit at this, her captain's attitude getting to her. May as well just promote me, she replied. I do most of the work anyway. Regardless, he's right. Keep an eye out for Drum. I've got my hands full. You should take a break, Nijiko, Vivi said as she smiled at her. I can look after them for a bit, it's no big deal. No need, Nijiko said. I can look after two sick morons, it's not that hard. Nijiko, take a break, Luffy said, surprising her. She turned to him, and he was watching her warily. You've done a lot. We need you up here too. And they also don't need me, Vivi said with a smirk as she went for the cabin. So I'll take my turn looking after them. After all, it can't be that hard. Another day or so passed by without much happening. Nijiko had finally accepted a break from looking after their sick crewmates, allowing Vivi to substitute in for her. This freed up the quartermaster to command the men around the deck, allowing them to gain some real distance instead of loitering around like they had been before. When night came, Luffy trudged down to where Nami and Yosaku were, intending on sleeping there. Johnny had followed him, still worried about Yosaku. The two slept soundly, despite their worry for their friends. After morning came, the crew continued operating as best they could without a real navigator, and it didn't take long before things changed. Island, Usopp shouted, making everyone perk up. I see an island. Really? Luffy asked as he felt his face break into a grin. Yes, finally, what do you see, Usopp? Looks pretty mountainous, he replied from the crow's nest. Really big weird mountains, but it's definitely a snow island. Let's hope they have a doctor, Nijiko said. Nami and Yosaku aren't doing any better than they were before. This brought Luffy's mood down a bit, knowing his friends weren't feeling any better than before. They must, it's a whole island, Zoro said. There's no way that there's no doctors. That would be our kind of luck, Usopp hissed as he joined them on the deck, making Sanji punch his shoulder. Don't jinx us, he said. The ship soon made landfall, and the crew directed into a small cove to dock and go inland. As soon as they got close, they were ambushed. Get out of here, pirates, one of the people said. We don't need your kind here. Huh? Luffy asked, confused. They hadn't even done anything. There's nothing here for you, another man shouted. Get out of here or we'll kill you. Please hear us out, Nijiko shouted. We have sick crew members and we don't have a doctor. Sucks for you, another person said. Hopefully they die. Less pirates in this world the better. Something inside Luffy snapped as he heard this, and he turned to face the man who'd spoken out angrily. What did you say? He demanded in a low tone. Say it again, I dare you. Easy Captain, Zoro said, holding him back, don't start something. Say it again. Luffy shouted. Nami and Yosaku didn't do anything to you people, help us. Screw your people, another man said, taking aim at Luffy with his rifle. We won't say it again, get going. Vivi had been down below tending to Nami and Yosaku when she heard a shot ring out above her. Jumping to her feet, she burst onto the deck and looked around wildly, finding that they'd reached an island. Over towards the front of the Merry Luffy was lying spread eagle on the deck, his hat lying next to him. The crew seemed stunned to say the least, and she also saw people had surrounded them and were aiming guns at them. What the hell is going on? She demanded. Natives aren't very welcoming, Zoro said as he turned to her. Luffy got shot in the face. Vivi was relatively worried by this until the captain of the ship sat back up and took a deep breath, scratching his nose. The natives of what she presumed was Drum Island began to gasp as Luffy picked his hat up and put it on again. Is he a demon? He took that shot to his face. How did that not kill him? Luffy ignored their confused cries as he got back to his feet, eyeing them from under his hat. Usopp, he said. That was all it took for the sniper to aim his own gun up, aiming it at the man who'd presumably shot Luffy. Do it again. The sniper threatened. I'll have you know I have 8,000 subordinates. Attack again and we'll converge on this island. This sent the natives into a scramble. But Vivi wasn't having this. She walked up to Luffy and pulled him aside, glaring at him. Don't play this like a tough guy, she said. We need to be on their good side, because Nami and Yosaku won't make it to Alabasta. They said they didn't care if they died, Luffy replied with a pout. It made me mad. Stow your anger. We need their help. You're better than that, Luffy. I know you are. Luffy watched her quietly for a moment before he smiled and clapped her on the back. You're right, Vivi. I was being dumb. Watch this. I got it. Vivi watched in confusion as the captain strolled back over in between the crew of the Merry and the natives, and turned to the people. He dropped to his knees and practically drove his head into the deck, bowing deeply to them. Luffy? Usopp asked, dropping his rifle a bit. Please help my friends, he shouted into the deck. We can all stay on the ship if that makes you feel more comfortable, but please help my friends, they won't make it to another island. We need you, all we need is a doctor's help, please. Luffy's cries for help silenced the natives of Drum, who looked among themselves curiously. After what felt like an eternity of silence, a man sighed. You may come inland, he said to them. Bring your friends. We'll do what we can. Looks like it's just you and me, Zoro said as he watched the rest of the crew leave Merry. Luffy had appointed him to stay behind and guard the ship, which he was fine with. He had to get some more training it anyway. Having to sit and wait for the rest to save him at Little Garden seriously rubbed him the wrong way. With this, he turned to Karoo, who he had been talking to. Want to train with me? He asked. Quack. This country doesn't have a name, the man, who'd identified himself as Dalton, said. This made Luffy raise an eyebrow. So we aren't at Drum, then, he said. Dalton made a face at this. Well, we used to be called that, he replied, but not anymore. Not since we lost our king. He didn't give them any more information than that, so Luffy had nothing to go on. He just focused on carrying Nami as carefully as he could, making sure not to drop her. Johnny was carrying Yosaku, while the rest of the crew formed a circle around them as the people escorted them through the countryside. They passed what Dalton identified as a hiking bear, which Luffy thought was pretty cool. Bears were cool in general, after all. After a while the people got them to a town they called Big Horn, Dalton stretching. You guys can come rest in my house, he said, and I'll tell you what you need to know. Are you sure about that, Dalton? Someone asked. These guys are pirates, you know. I don't think they're quite like the others we have seen, Dalton told him. Please, follow me. Ignoring the stares they got from people, the Straw Hats followed Dalton into his home, laying down Nami on a bed and Yosaku on the couch. Thank you for helping us, Nijiko said to Dalton with a smile. We were really worried for a moment there. Dalton nodded. It's no problem, he replied. However, actually getting your friends the help they need may be harder than you think. There's only one doctor in this country, and she's a witch. A witch? Usopp asked, sounding terrified. Is she a monster too? Dalton made a face at the sniper, but sighed. She's an interesting character to say the least, he said as he turned to the window. Do you see the castle? Up there? Luffy looked out the window and looked up towards the very top of the mountain, seeing a building standing there. What's up there? He asked. It's the castle the old king used to live in, Dalton said. Now only Dr. Kureha lives there. Why would a doctor live so far away? Sanji asked. Call her down here, we need some help. Not possible, Dalton said. We have no way to contact her, and she comes down when she wants. That makes no sense, Nijiko replied. Doctors are supposed to be available as much as possible. She is a good doctor, though, Dalton said in an attempt to reassure her. She's been keen for someone who's 140. Sorry, what now? Johnny asked. Dalton ignored him. She comes whenever she feels like and treats any patients, he said. Then she takes whatever she wants as payment. She is good, though. Sounds like a pirate, Luffy said flatly, still looking up at the mountain through the window. They didn't have time to wait for her, so did that mean they needed to go to her? She is a strange one to be sure, Dalton replied. Some say she flies to the villages, and some say she rides a sleigh. Hell, it's even been said she lives with some strange creature. A monster? Usopp asked weakly. She lives with a monster? So because of this, no one wants to see her themselves, Dalton said. Not only that, but getting up there is nigh impossible. All we can do is wait. This is exactly the type of thing that would happen to us, Sanji hissed as he rubbed the bridge of his nose in irritation. Luffy frowned and crossed his arms, thinking about their options. Waiting wasn't a good idea. Both Nami and Yosaku were in a bad way. But from what Dalton said, getting to that mountain might not be the easiest thing in the world. Be big bro Luffy. Luffy snapped back to reality as he heard his name being called, looking towards the couch. Yosaku had opened his eyes, and was staring right at him. Yosaku, Luffy said, rushing to his side as everyone else turned to look. Luffy knelt down to meet the eyes of his crew member, who was barely conscious. How do you feel? Terrible, he replied. Have we found a doctor? Luffy frowned, unable to answer positively. They had, but not the way they wanted. No, he couldn't say that. Yosaku didn't need to hear that. We have, he replied with a smile. Rest easy, you won't have to wait much longer. That's good. Did we make it to Alabasta yet? He asked. No, not yet. Luffy said. Don't worry about that. Focus on staying alive. We need you. Yosaku managed a weak smile before his eyes closed again, presumably falling asleep again. Luffy stared at the man quietly for a moment before he sighed and took a deep breath, standing. I'm taking them to the doctor directly, he said as he turned to everyone else. We can't wait. Did you hear me? Dalton asked. It's not possible to get up there? Did I say I cared? Luffy countered, surprising Dalton. Nami and Yosaku have run out of time, and I'm not waiting. Luffy, it's not possible, Sanji said. I don't like it any more than you do, but... I'll come too, Nijiko said, cutting Sanji off. I'll carry Nami. Luffy nodded. Thanks, he replied. Hey, don't leave me out, Johnny shouted. I'm coming too, I can carry Yosaku. Sounds like a plan, Luffy replied, walking over to Nami. Hey, Nami. Are you there? Despite how pained she looked, the navigator managed to open her eyes. We're gonna get you to the doctor now. But I need you to trust me, okay? Why do you even have to ask? She scolded weakly, raising her hand up slowly. Of course I trust you. Luffy smiled brightly at this, accepting the high five he was offered. That's the spirit. Let's go find this witch. Stand still, Vivi said as she tightened the straps. I need to make sure that they're secure. She tied the knot as hard as she could, securing Yosaku to Johnny and Nami to Nijiko. Both needed their hands free, so carrying them like this was really the only way they could accompany Luffy. There, that should be tight enough. Think so? Nijiko asked, testing the fastening to make sure it wasn't loose. Well, it feels good. Then let's go, Luffy said. We don't have time to stand around talking. Are you guys sure about this? Dalton asked as the two joined Luffy. It won't be an easy trek by any stretch. We can't wait anymore, Negico replied. We won't either, Johnny shouted. We need to help them. Wait you guys. Usopp shouted, running up to them. Negico, I have something for you. Huh? Negico asked, sounding confused. What? Usopp smiled. Remember I took one of your old pistols cause you took Mr. Five's? Well, I had an idea for it, and I outfitted it. I present to you the first Usopp brand grappling gun. The new weapon was pressed into Negico's hand, who stared at it in surprise. The flintlock had been modified significantly, its barrel being much thicker and now had a hook hanging out of the end of the barrel. Wow, Negico said as she broke into a grin. Does it work? Of course it does, I made it, Usopp replied with a smirk. I know it won't get you guys to the top, but there's a decent amount of rope in there, let me know how it goes. We will, Negico replied with a smile as she pocketed the gun. Nice work, Usopp. Can you modify my holster so I can hold it better? Of course. I'll get on that once Nami and Yosaku get better. Usopp seemed very proud of his work, and Negico's compliment seemed to fill him with even more. Dalton just smiled. Well, in that case, you should take the route to the east. It's relatively free of lapins and easier to. Dalton was interrupted as Luffy let out a battle cry, both Negico and Johnny following close behind as he sprinted off towards the mountain in the distance. Vivi watched with a weak smile as they disappeared into the snow, Dalton looking surprised. Yeah, he's not said to him. Dalton sighed and chuckled. I can tell, he replied. But when one cares so much about their crew, waiting can feel like hell. With this, he turned back to his house. Would you like to come in? It's pretty cold out here. I'm okay, Sanji replied, eyes glued to where the captain had disappeared too. Me too, Usopp said, trying to look tough despite the fact that he was shivering. I can wait too, Vivi smiled. I guess we're waiting, she said to Dalton, who smiled as well. I guess knowing your friends are so sick it's hard to calm down, huh? He asked, sitting down. Mind if I sit with you? Not at all, Sanji replied. Meanwhile, want to tell us why there's only one doctor on the whole island? Dalton frowned at this, looking down at his feet. We used to have more doctors, he said. Back when we were still a somewhat prosperous kingdom. Of course, we lost all of that when we were raided by pirates. Pirates? Usopp asked, Dalton nodding. That's why you tried to scare us off. Pirates attacked you before. Yes, exactly. Dalton said. But it's so much more than that. This island lost everything because of those pirates. We're only barely able to hold on as we are. All because of that damn Blackbeard. Vivi didn't recognize the name of the pirate who had taken Drum down, but the fact that he had was enough to scare her. I don't know how he did it. With only 5 members, he destroyed everything. 5? Usopp cried out. Holy crap, I sure as hell don't want to run into that guy. You sure don't, Dalton replied, looking upset. That's not even the worst of it. When the kingdom found out just how much devastation Blackbeard had brought. That bastard King Wapol escaped with the royal army, leaving the whole country to fend for itself. Wait, did you just say Wapol? Vivi asked. Dalton nodded. The former king of Drum Island, he said. When Blackbeard and his gang were wreaking havoc, he fled like the coward he is. Isn't that the mouth guy that attacked us out at sea? Sanji asked. Vivi nodded. It was, she said. Those guys he was working with called him Wapol. You saw him? Dalton asked, looking surprised. Vivi nodded. We did, she said. He attacked us while we were on our way here. He wanted an eternal pose to come here. This only made Dalton frown. So he's trying to get back here, he said. I'm not surprised, but that's not good. If he comes back here, he will surely try and take the throne back, and that's not good. Doesn't sound like it, Usopp said. But don't worry, Luffy sent him flying. I doubt he'll find his way back here anytime soon. Did you guys know that people who live in the snow never sleep? Big bro, that makes no sense. No, it's true. If you sleep in the snow you die. Why did Dalton have a bed then? To prepare for when he dies, clearly. Can you guys focus? Negico demanded, interrupting the moronic conversation. Of course people who live in the snow sleep, Luffy. That's not how that works. Are you saying that guy in my village lied to me? Luffy asked, looking skeptical. Yes, that's what I'm saying, Negico shouted. That doesn't make any sense. Well, why not? He asked. Nijiko suppressed the urge to hit the captain over the head, slowly realizing why Nami could be so violent. Shut up and focus, she replied as she turned her eyes forward again. We need to keep our eyes on that mountain. Moreover, come up with a way to get up there. Didn't Big Bro Usopp give you a grappling gun? Johnny asked. It's nowhere near long enough to get us up there, she replied, watching a rabbit with razor-sharp teeth pull at Johnny's pants. So we'll have to come up with some way to utilize it well. Well, I guess we could hold on. Johnny stopped himself and turned around, punting the rabbit away from himself. Sorry, that thing was bugging me. Yeah, I've seen a few, Luffy said, annoying little guys. I think we have bigger problems, Nijiko said as she came to a stop, literally. Standing in front of the trio was a pack of wild animals that seemed to resemble both bears and rabbits at the same time. What are those things? Luffy asked. Dunno, Johnny replied as he placed a hand on his chin. Are they rabbits or bears? What does it matter? Nijiko asked, sweating a little as the creatures began to growl. They clearly don't like that we're up here. Leave it to me. Luffy shouted. Nijiko watched as the captain charged forward without a care in the world, engaging the creatures in battle. Gum Gum Whip. Before any of the creatures could react, Luffy slammed an outstretched leg into all of them, sending them flying in various directions. They quickly recovered and tried to pounce on Luffy, who was far too fast for them. He bounced around like a maniac as the creatures tried to catch him, but it was clear he was making it too hard. Those must be the Lapins I heard Dalton mention briefly before we left, Nijiko said, recalling the man say something about this path being not so free of them. Atta B, big bro. Johnny shouted from beside her. Teach those things they have to pick one thing or the other. What does that even mean? Nijiko asked, confused. She wasn't able to hear an answer sadly, as a growl alerted her to a problem. Turning, she saw a group of the bears had wandered up to them, clearly intent on devouring them too. Thinking quickly, she readied her pistol and aimed it at them, hoping the threat of it was enough. Sadly, it didn't seem to be the case, as the Lapins attempted to pounce on them the first chance they got. Nijiko fired off shots into the legs of the few who came for her, causing them to halt and veer away, licking their wounds. Johnny was not so lucky, as he couldn't really draw his sword and fight with Yosaku on his back. Thankfully Luffy came to his aid, punching the creatures in the face before they could devour the swordsman. You two need to leave this to me, he said. I don't want Nami and Yosaku to get hurt. There's way too many to guarantee that, Johnny replied. What do we do? Luffy gritted his teeth at this, not answering for a moment. Leave it to me, he finally shouted, cracking his knuckles. Both of you make a dash for the mountain. No matter what happens, don't turn back, I can handle this. Are you sure? Nijiko asked weakly, Luffy nodding. Fine, we'll leave this to you. Gum Gum Pistol. Luffy re-engaged the Lapins, punching open a hole in the pack. Seeing the opening he had created, Nijiko ran as hard as she could through the snow to make it through. She sensed that a few tried to eat her, but Luffy forced them away with violent attacks. Before long the sounds of battle began to fade into the distance, both of the pirates putting distance between them and their captain. Do you think Big Bro will be okay? Johnny asked, looking over his shoulder. I hope so, Nijiko replied, unable to answer him, but we have to trust him. I really do hope they don't see any Lapins, Dalton said, drawing everyone's attention. They're rather vicious creatures. Are they that dangerous? Sanji asked, lighting himself a cigarette. Very much so, yes. Dalton replied. Plus they attack in packs, so I hope they're okay. Well, Luffy went with them, so I think they'll be okay. Usopp said. I just hope that my grappling gun helps them. I really want to make some more things like that, so I hope it goes well. What are Lapins, anyway? Vivi asked, ignoring the sniper. Large vicious bears, Dalton replied, making Vivi frown. They also resemble rabbits, but none of the cuteness crosses over. I hope they aren't too big of a problem, the princess said, looking worriedly towards the mountain range. Hey, Dalton. The group turned to see a woman walking up to them, calling Dalton's name. Yes, Maria? Dalton asked. The pirates were looking for the doctor, right? She asked. That's right, why? Sanji asked. Well, I received word that she just showed up in Cocoa Weed Town. Maria replied with a smile. However, none of the others were the least bit Pleiadian. Seriously, they all shouted in tandem. Meanwhile, in the aforementioned cocoa-weed town, a small boy was crying out in pain. This was much to the chagrin of his father, who wanted him to be quiet. Despite this, the boy continued to whine, now receiving threats from his father to quiet down or go outside. Before long, the doors to the bar burst open, surprising everyone inside. Standing in the doorway was a feminine figure, with a reindeer standing by her side. "Do you hear that, Chopper?" the woman asked. "The father is so cruel, telling his son to be quiet or go outside." The reindeer did not reply, just watched quietly. "Dr. Creaw," the father said in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "What was that?" Creaw asked. "You want to know my secret to my youthful appearance?" "No one asked you that," the bar shouted angrily. Creaw laughed at this. "What else would I possibly be here for?" she demanded. "I've come to treat the sick. Now, tell me what's wrong, little boy." "I'm sorry," Dalton said weakly as the sled sped towards Cocoa-Weed Town. "She came down yesterday. I never expected her to come down this soon." "It's not your fault," Vivi reassured as she kept her hair out of her face. "We just need to get there." "There's no way those three will come back anyway," Usopp said as he watched ahead of them. "And with how strong they are, they probably won't have a problem getting there. So we need to ask the doctor to go back to the castle to meet them." "So Dalton," Sanji said from behind them, trying to keep his cigarette lit. "You say the doctor is 140, right?" Dalton made a face at this. "Yes, why?" he asked. "Does she look good of her age or no?" the cook asked. "You need to stop right there," Usopp said. "Just don't." "I was just curious," Sanji said. Vivi ignored the men as they descended into an argument, presumably about the appearance the doctor would have. She kept her eyes forward, hoping to see the town on the horizon soon. After all, the doctor needed to get back to the castle. "I'm sorry," Dalton said, making her look over at him. "It's my fault there's no doctors here." "Don't be silly," she said with a smile. "This isn't your fault. Just focus and get us to Cocoa-Weed. We'll be okay." Dalton didn't seem to really believe her, but he nodded and kept his eyes ahead. Vivi looked back and watched Usopp and Sanji argue about the doctor's appearance, smiling a bit. It was good to see that despite the bad luck, they were easily staying high-spirited. After all, it could be worse. "Lord Wapol, this is it. We've arrived. Ha 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 ha, Drum Kingdom, your ruler has returned." Zoro hid under Mary's railing as soon as he saw the ship breach the water's surface. He knew that he'd recognized it. It was that weirdo who had attacked them the other day. Why was he here? Had he followed them? He had just been about to dive into the icy water to train, and now this was happening. Could they never catch a break? Karoo quacked fearfully next to him, and Zoro signaled for the bird to shush. As far as he could tell, they didn't know he was here, which was all the better. "Chess," the guy with the big mouth said. "How does my precious castle look?" "Undamaged, sir," another voice, presumably Chess, said. "Just the way we left it." "Wonderful. This is it, men. We can leave the pirate life behind and live like the royalty we are." "Sir," another voice said. "Those Brat's ship is right over there." "Huh? Crap, they'd spotted Mary." Zoro peeked over the side slowly, spotting the ship resting in the bay same as Mary. "Those annoying Brats are here too?" "Yes, but the ship doesn't seem to have anyone on it, there's no activity." "So they all went inland, huh? I won't allow such annoying tykes to run around my kingdom. Once we retake our land, we'll scour the island for them. One thing at a time, though. Men, let's retake what is ours." The crew cheered with the captain, all of them eventually making their way inland. Zoro just watched as they dealt with the small defense force that had been stationed at the bay, not wanting to risk revealing himself just yet. Once he was sure they were gone, he turned and looked at Karoo. "Looks like we've got trouble, Duck," he said. "Quack. What should we do, huh? Do we leave the Mary and go to find the others or what?" Quack. You're right. We can't follow the same path they did. They'd spot us. Maybe we should head a little more north, that way they won't see us through the snow." Quack. "Well duh. I'm not leaving the action to everyone else." With this, Zoro got to his feet and walked towards the cabin, looking for his coat. "Get ready, Duck. We're heading inland too." Quack. "What do you mean she isn't here?" Usopp shouted angrily, startling the people in the bar. However, the man who ran it didn't seem fazed. You just missed her, sadly, he said. I think she said she was heading to Gyosta? I'm not sure. What's that? Vivi asked, looking at Dalton. The man still looked upset with something. It's a lake north of here, he replied. If she's going there, she might be trying to skate on the surface. We don't have any time to waste. Let's go. Without wasting any more time talking, everyone jumped back into the sled, but before they could go, someone grabbed the edge of the sled to stop them. Dalton, the man said. Bad news. We're in a hurry, Dalton replied. What is it? It's Wapol. He's back. Dalton's eyes widened, and from what Vivi had been told, this wasn't good. Where? He demanded. He's on his way back to Big Horn. He came from the same bay the pirates are docked at. I wonder if Green Hair is okay, Sanji said. Vivi figured he would be. She'd seen what he could do. Dalton looked pained for a moment, before finally he got off of the sleigh and turned to them. I'm sorry, he said. I have to go and deal with this. Go north and you will reach Gyosta, trust me. Okay, Vivi replied. Be careful. Dalton nodded, before he turned and sprinted into the distance. Vivi watched him go before she turned to look at the others. What? Usopp asked. Should we help him? She asked. Sanji shook his head. We're spread too thin, he said. If anyone can help, it's Marimo. He's closest. We need to make sure that Doctor gets back to the castle. Sanji's right, Usopp said. Trust Zoro, I'm sure he can help. He's not that dumb. Usually, Sanji added. Nezuko felt like she had been running forever, because her lungs were on fire. Ironic considering it was the opposite outside her body, but as it turned out, running in knee-deep snow was easier said than done. Both her and Johnny had stopped where they were, not able to push themselves any further than this. Did we get away? Johnny asked, barely able to breathe. God, I hope so, Nezuko replied, looking behind them. I can't run anymore. I feel like I'm dying. Don't you dare, Johnny replied, still panting. I can't carry 3 people to this mountain. Don't worry, I'm fine. Wait, she said, drawing her revolver. What's that? Johnny turned as well, spotting the same outline in the snow that she had seen. Both waited, unable to slow their breathing due to how exhausted they were. The outline got closer and closer, and before long Nezuko saw what it was. Luffy? She asked, gaping as the captain returned to them. His coat and shorts had been completely torn up, leaving him in nothing but his shirt underneath to protect him from the cold. He had slash wounds all over his body and face, but he looked relatively unaffected by it. Oh, there you guys are, he said with a grin, holding his hat down on his head. I've been looking for you. Never mind that moron. Are you okay? Nezuko asked. You're covered in bites and slashes. Ah, I'm okay. Luffy replied as he looked down at his arms. The snow makes it hard to feel it. Those rabbits sure put up a good fight, but I taught them a lesson. That's bad, big bro, Johnny shouted. You're getting frostbite. Frost what? Luffy asked, making both of them face palm. And this guy wanted to be king of the pirates? Never mind that. Look ahead. We've almost made it to the mountain. Looking back, Nezuko saw that he was right. They had almost reached the mountain, much closer to them than it had been before. She and Johnny had been too busy trying to get air into their lungs to notice. Well, let's hurry then, she said as she turned to face ahead of them. Now you need a doctor too. You might get rabies from those things. Yeah, that's what my grandpa warned me against as a kid. Radio. Nezuko rolled her eyes and ignored him, trudging forward. She wasn't in the mood to deal with his idiocy. The trio rushed as fast as they could towards the mountain, Nezuko and Johnny doing their best to keep up with the injured captain. Once they made it, they stared up at the mountain in awe, trying to figure out how exactly they were going to make it up there. Well, we made it, Luffy said with a laugh. Nezuko, get that gun out and let's go. Alright, Nezuko replied, digging K out the grappling gun. She looked up at the mountain again, trying to look for any sort of angle she could use to latch onto. There had to be one at least, right? So what do we do once we get the hook attached? Johnny asked. We carry Nami and Yosaku up, obviously. Luffy replied, then we get them some help and we can continue to Alabasta. Let's just hurry this up, Nezuko said, aiming the pistol. Not wasting any time, she fired the hook, watching it fly up and latch onto the wall. She gave it a testing tug, and frowned as it strained a little bit. Jumping up a bit, Nijiko was able to land on her feet as the hook came detached, falling back down to the ground. Great. She should have thought about this. What happened? Johnny asked. This is bad, Nijiko said, turning back to them. Both men just watched her curiously. A thought occurred to me. I don't think this grappling gun can carry too many people. What do you mean? Luffy asked. Nijiko swallowed hard and looked down at the gun, punching herself for not seeing the problem with this sooner. I don't think this one rope will sustain more than one person, let alone 5. She said weakly. Silence came over the group for a moment, the snow whistling around them, the only company they had. Before long though, that was different. Ah! Luffy and Johnny screamed at once, startling Nijiko. Nami and Yosaku are gonna die. We messed up. Ah! Shut up, both of you! Nijiko shouted angrily, hoping that didn't bother either Nami or Yosaku. They'll be fine, we've just gotta find another way up. Like what? Luffy shouted. There's no way up there. There has to be, she refuted. Listen, there's no way this mountain had a castle up there with no form on transport up there. That means that there has to be a way up there. Okay, so how do we find it? Johnny asked weakly. Nijiko made a face and looked around, trying to find the answer to that herself. Before long, she came up with an idea. Luffy, can you take Nami for a sec? She asked, working to unfasten her sister from her back. Sure, why? Luffy asked. I'm going to use the grappling hook to get a vantage point, she replied. Hopefully I can see more from higher up, do you know what I mean? Aha! Johnny said, snapping his fingers. To see if there's a way up we weren't told, I see. Exactly, Nijiko said as she transferred Nami to Luffy's back instead, picking up the hook to use it again. So give me a second, I'll see what I can see. Okay, hurry though. Luffy said, I can't feel my arms. Taking this worrying statement in stride, Nijiko nodded and turned back to face the mountain, aiming the gun as best she could. Deciding she had a good enough shot, she pulled the trigger. The hook exploded out of the front of the gun, flying upwards and latching onto the side of the cliff. Giving it a few good tugs, she decided it'd be able to sustain her weight. Just like she'd assumed though, no way it'd hold another person at the same time. Alright, here we go, she said. Using all of the strength she had acquired training with Zoro, Nijiko slowly climbed up the rope. She gained height slowly, unable to go fast seeing as she was already exhausted. Slowly but surely she was able to gain the height she was looking for, turning to see she'd made it about 30 feet up. Looking around, Nijiko did her best to look through the snow and find what she was looking for. A transport of any kind, anything at all. She just needed something. See anything? Johnny called from below, voice muffled by the snow flying around them. Nothing yet, she called, back, angrily whipping her hair out of her face. I can't see anything through this snow. Keep looking, Luffy encouraged. Doing as he said, Nijiko continued to look for what she was after. Something, anything, was all they needed. No matter how hard she looked, nothing was standing out to her. It was all white. Angrily gritting her teeth, Nijiko tried to keep her emotions in check. She'd been stressed out for the past few days, and now she was running out of time to save her sister. Come on. You came on this journey to look after Nami, didn't you? Well, hurry up and start doing that, because she needs you now. Feeling a prick in the back of her head, Nijiko felt compelled to look off into the distance. She didn't know why, but she felt like there had to be an answer there. Narrowing her eyes, for the briefest of moments, she saw through the snow. It was only for a moment, but she felt like she saw the outline of a building, and a rope leading up over her head. After only a second it faded back into the snow, and Nijiko made a face. Was Y losing her mind, or had she really seen something through the snow? For some reason though, she felt extremely confident in her feeling. There was something over there, she could feel it. Deciding to trust her gut, she slid back down the rope slowly and landed back on the ground, both men watching her expectantly. Over there, she said, pointing in the direction of whatever she had seen. I saw a rope leading up to the castle. If we're going to find a way up, it's over here. Are you sure? Luffy asked as she tugged the hook off the mountain to shove it back in the gun. Positive, she said, somewhat lying. She wasn't positive, but for some reason she just had a really good feeling about this. I'm positive, she repeated, trying to convince herself as much as Luffy. The captain nodded, grinning. Alright then, let's get over there as soon as possible. Are you sure we haven't passed it? Sanji asked. Yes. Well, no, Usopp replied, looking off the sleigh as they rode through the snow. I can't read maps very well, Vivi said weakly as she stared at the one Dalton had left with them. I can't tell how far we've gone. Surely she'll just return to the castle eventually, right? Sanji asked, sounding bored with what they were doing. I think we might be wasting our time. If she's so fast then she's probably already left Gyosta. Doesn't mean we can't look, Vivi replied. Besides, it's like you guys said. Zoro can handle the problems at Big Horn. Come on you stupid duck, how have we not gotten there yet? Zoro demanded angrily as Karoo sprinted through the snow. I told you where to go. Quack, Karoo replied angrily as it turned to glare at him. Quack quack quack, quack. What did you call me? Quack quack. I am not hopeless, I know exactly where I'm going. Zoro growled as the duck ignored him and continued on its way. He knew this stupid thing was going the wrong way, but it didn't believe him. How hard was it to follow a path, honestly? Quack. Zoro looked down as Karoo came to a stop on a hill, which coincidentally overlooked a town. Huh, we got here, he said, Karoo looking at him smugly. Don't start with me, bird, or I'll tell the princess you got eaten by the wildlife out here. The threat seemed to shut the bird up, and Zoro disembarked to watch what was happening. From the looks of things, they were a bit too late to stop the devastation. Wapol was standing amid whatever was left of the surrounding buildings, chewing on part of one. He laughed as he swallowed the building, just like he had part of the Mary. Listen up, citizens, he shouted. Your king has returned, and I will eat or take whatever I want. Why is that again, Kuromarimo? You're the king of Drum, Lord Wapol. The man with an afro said. You're welcome to any and all possessions the citizens have. Damn right, Wapol agreed. And as such, I will take any and all things that I deem worthy. Your Highness, another voice said. Zoro watched as the man who had stood on the water appeared there. I have news on those children. They were seen heading towards the castle. The castle? Wapol demanded angrily. Why? It seems that the insufferable Dr. Kureha has moved in there. What? That witch is in my castle. This will not stand, men. Gather to me. We're heading to the castle this instant to kick out the witch and kill those children. Looks like things are going south, Karoo. Ed the pirates organize around a massive snow hippo or whatever that was. We may have to intervene here. Q quack. Yes, both of us. What if they catch Vivi? This seemed to disturb the duck, who managed to put on some sort of battle face. It wasn't much, but Zoro supposed it was enough. However, before he could jump down, a cry rang out. Zoro looked back down. The man who had led his crew into town had appeared, carrying what looked like a shovel. Despite its appearance, it was clearly a blade. Using it, he'd slashed down Wapol's front, throwing the man backwards onto the ground as he bled. Dalton. The townsfolk around them shouted happily, You're here. So you're still roaming around, huh? You useless cow? Kuromarimo said with a smirk. What do you want? Dalton frowned as he spun his shovel around a bit, glaring at the men. I've come to kill you all, he said flatly. To end this, and bring peace to this land at last. Zoro smirked as the man faced off against Wapol and his men, looking menacing for a one versus who knew how many. Looks like things are just getting interesting, huh Karoo? Quack. I'm gonna die. Wapol shouted as blood spurted from his wounds. However, nobody seemed concerned. Doctors, Kuromarimo said. Assist him. Zoro watched, stunned as doctors in scrubs appeared out of nowhere, seemingly ready to operate. The group surrounded Wapol and began to work, everyone watching in surprise. Before long they separated, and Wapol stood with a laugh. I feel much better now, he said. Oh my, Dalton. You used to be one of us. What are you doing here? Have you come to bow at my feet and ask to come back? Too bad, I won't take you back? Zoro couldn't tell because of how far away he was, but he could tell Dalton looked pissed. Never, he hissed. My allegiances are with your father and this island. I tried, I really did, to support you. But I can't, not after what you did. What I did? Wapol demanded. What did I do? You abandoned this place when Blackbeard was coming after us. Dalton shouted. You saved your own sorry hide instead of helping your people. You're not worthy of ruling this island, not like your father was. I disagree, Wapol said with a smirk. I am worthy, want to know why? Because I was born to rule. Just because you were born into a position does not make you worthy of it, Dalton countered. You treated the people who live here like s. You exiled all but 20 doctors and made them work for you. You made anyone who needed medical help lick your boots if they needed treatment. That's not how a king treats his people. Well, it's how I do, Wapol said with a laugh. Now, what did you say you were doing? Dalton lowered his gaze slightly, and Zoro could tell things were about to start. Before they did though, Dalton began to change. He grew fur on his body, and horns grew from his head. As he changed, Zoro noted that he looked like a cow of some sort. You heard me the first time, Dalton said. I came to kill you. Soldiers came out in front of Wapol as he said this, making the former king laugh. You'll have to carve through my men first, he said. So, let's see what you can do, cow. The men raised their weapons, aiming them at Dalton. The bullman readied his shovel-like weapon, and the battle commenced. Fiddle bamf, and it was over. As the soldiers under Wapol's command fired their weapons, Dalton cried out an attack. The man dispersed into afterimages, his speed greatly increased. Zoro watched as, using this new speed, he sliced through the soldiers that had attacked him. He finished by slamming the final mont's head into the ground, ending the barrage of gunfire. Wapol looked stunned, and Zoro had to admit he wasn't expecting this sort of power. You always were an annoyance, Chess said, him and Kuromarimo walking forward. Chess readied a bow and arrow, while Kuromarimo readied his fists, hair? But, it's quite obvious what your weakness is. Is it? Zoro asked aloud, looking at Kuru. The duck just blinked at him, seemingly unsure himself. No, don't. Zoro whipped his head back around, trying to find what he'd missed talking to the duck. He soon saw it, as arrows were flying towards the crowd on onlookers instead of towards Dalton. The man was rushing forwards, but Zoro couldn't tell if he was going to make it in time. Damn it, man! Zoro hissed. Bolting forward, he beat Dalton to the arrows and sliced them in half, causing them to fall uselessly. The crowd looked stunned at his arrival, but he wasn't really concerned about that. He was just glad he'd made it in time. You, Dalton said as Zoro stood up straight. You're one of those pirates, aren't you? The one left guarding the ship, yeah, Zoro said as he removed Wado Ichimonji from his mouth. I saw them come inland and figured I might be needed. Where's my crew? Off looking for their doctor, Dalton replied. It's easier said than done these days, sadly. Zoro frowned. How hard could it be to get a doctor? We have to stop their advance here, do you understand? Yeah, Zoro replied as he turned his gaze back. I heard enough of their rambling to know they're not the kindest lot. Dalton nodded, also turning his gaze back to see what Wapol was doing, who just looked confused. Who are you? He demanded to Zoro. Wait, you were on that Bratz ship the other day, Zoro smirked. I was. You missed me back on the ship too. Too bad, huh? Wapol gritted his teeth angrily, his two advisors still standing by to fight. Chess, he shouted. Yes, sir, Chess replied. The man knocked an arrow and aimed it at Zoro and Dalton, who both prepared themselves. The arrow flew, but something was wrong. The arrow exploded halfway to them, churning out a massive smokescreen as it did. Zoro coughed as the smoke went for his eyes, squinting as he tried to see through it. All he could hear was Wapol laughing. I don't have time to deal with you Nimrods, I'll make sure to dispose of you once I've kicked that wretched witch out of my castle. Men, Robson, let's go. Zoro couldn't see it, but he could hear some massive thing sprinting past him. Once the smoke cleared, Zoro saw that the prior king and his men had disappeared. He could see a path leading up towards the mountains, which was obviously where they'd run off to. He ran off? Zoro demanded. Dalton sighed. He's quite good at that, he muttered under his breath. Come with me, swordsman. We have to make sure he does not make it to the castle. Okay, let's go. It's this way, how do you know? Their trail is right here, must have moved it. Quack. You be quiet. What the hell is this thing? Luffy asked as the trio finally made it to what Nijiko had seen through the snow. She herself had no idea, but if she had to guess it was some sort of transportation system. The small building led to a rope, which disappeared into the snow towards the castle. That was all, though. There was no actually transport in the building, which led her to believe it was either decommissioned or broken. Either way, it was of no use to them. Crap, she hissed. Now what do we do? There's no way up this frigging mountain. Sure there is, Luffy replied. Nijiko raised an eyebrow at him, but he pointed towards the rope. The rope leads to the castle, right? He can use it to get there. Sure, but Nijiko tried. No, Luffy was right. The rope was the only way they were going to be able to get to the castle in time to save Nami and Yosaku. There's no way, Johnny said for her. How can we carry Nami and Yosaku over such a large distance? You know how far we walked to get here? Luffy just made a face at the swordsman. I'll carry them, he said flatly. Wait, what? Nijiko demanded. Luffy simply responded by pulling on his own cheek. I'm rubber, he said. I won't be as affected by the two of them weighing me down. I'll just stretch. Besides, if I do stretch I can get there even further by swinging like a monkey. He had to be kidding. No, Nijiko replied, wanting to wrestle her sister from the mont's back. I can't let you do that. You want me to let you swing yourself there with two deathly ill people? Do we have another option? Luffy demanded. Nijiko knew he was right, but she didn't want to admit it. You're insane, she confirmed, trying to convince herself just as much as Luffy. There's no way this will work. How can you expect to carry both of them and yourself over this giant space? It was one thing to have all of us climb up, but for just you to carry them across? I won't drop them, Luffy replied simply. Of course you say that, Nijiko replied. But how can I just blindly trust you when it's so likely something will? Nijiko, Luffy interrupted. Nijiko watched as the man regarded her quietly, his owl-like eyes boring into her. What? She asked, taken aback by his staring. I won't drop Nami, he said. What? I won't drop her. Nijiko didn't know what it was, but something about the way Luffy was talking, the way he was staring at her, she felt no reason to doubt him. As if she now felt comfortable following him into the depths of hell. Before she even knew what she was doing, shegged the space between them and the top of the mountain. Fine. She hissed angrily. Let's see if we can tie Yosaku to you as well. Luffy smiled at this. Cool, let's do it. Nijiko frowned at his excitement. I swear if you drop my sister, I'm leaving your ass in this frigid place. She hissed. Luffy only nodded as he laughed. Okay, and if I don't, you gotta come with me all the way to the One Piece, got it? Ignoring him, Nijiko went to work helping Johnny untie Yosaku from himself, then trying to find a way to latch both onto the captain. Are we sure about this? Johnny asked, sounding somewhat timid. I don't know if this a good idea. Maybe we missed something back at the mountain? We're out of time, Nijiko replied under her breath. If their fevers get any worse they could die. Hell, I'm surprised they're not dead already. Finally, after spending a few minutes trying to figure out what to do, the trio came up with a plan. Using the ropes that they had, Yosaku had been secured onto Luffy's back, and Nami was secured over his shoulders. It was an incredibly awkward system, what with them trying to not hurt Yosaku's head with Nami's weight. But they couldn't very well put someone on Luffy's front, that wouldn't work. They needed to have all the weight on the Mon's back. How does that feel? Nijiko asked as Luffy adjusted slightly. The captain frowned and moved a bit before he smiled. Feels good, he said. Ready to go? We'll be right behind you, Johnny said as he gave the captain a thumbs up. So don't go too far ahead of us. Nijiko nodded. There was no way they were going to let Luffy do this on his own. He was already doing more than he had to. Ready? Luffy asked as he approached the rope. Both of them nodded, and Nijiko forced herself to watch as Luffy grabbed the rope with one hand, and swung up to grab with the other. Before long the captain had swung ahead slightly like a monkey, which made Nijiko wondered if he had a real last name he ditched in favor of calling himself a monkey. Well, let's do this, Johnny said as he ditched his gloves. Nijiko watched as the swordsman reached up to clutch the rope, and did his best to follow Luffy. It looked hard, and she feared for her hands in the cold weather. That being said though, there was no more options. Taking a deep breath, Nijiko ditched her gloves and jumped up, grabbing the rope. The first thought that ran through her head was how cold it was. It only took a few seconds before she lost all feeling in her hands, and that only made it harder to grip onto the rope. Looking down only made it worse. Doing so on accident, Nijiko felt woozy as she stared at the abyss below her, threatening to swallow her up if she fell. Her hands seemed to work against her, barely able to keep a hold of the rope to save her. "Are you okay, Nijiko?" Johnny's voice came. Looking forward, she saw that the swordsman had turned to look at her, seemingly worried. "Why yeah, just cold," she replied weakly. "Thank God IT trained with Zoro though, otherwise I wouldn't have the upper body strength to do this." Johnny smiled. "I know, right? I'm glad Big Bro had our backs, now come on. Big Bro Luffy is leaving us behind." Luffy didn't know how long they had been climbing, but he knew something was going on. The rope swinging in the wind was bad enough, but now he could tell something was wrong. "Hey," he shouted over his shoulder, stretching his neck to turn to Johnny and Nijiko. "Are you guys okay?" So far," Nijiko replied, shielding her face as best she could from the wind. Luffy worriedly noted her hands looked blue. "Was that everything?" "Yeah, just wanted to make sure," Luffy replied, another gust of wind threatening to knock one of them off. "You guys can turn back if you want, I'll get them to the castle." "Like hell," Nijiko replied. "I'm not leaving Nami, or Yosaku, for that matter. We're in this mess together." "What she said," Johnny said. "We won't leave you, Big Bro Luffy." This made Luffy smile through the cold, which just made his mouth cold. Continuing on, the crew did their best to get to the castle. Before something snapped viciously. Turning his head around to find the problem, Luffy looked over his head. The rope was snapping. He was slightly past it, but Johnny and Nijiko were not. Panicking, he stretched his neck again. "You guys, the rope is snapping here, hurry." "What?" Johnny asked. Luffy gestured to it wildly, both of them somehow paling even more. "What do we do?" Nijiko asked. "Hurry over," Luffy said. "When it breaks we may get swung into the mountain, but it's better than swung back that way. Hurry." Both tried their best to hurry, but he could tell they were struggling. The poor rope snapped more and more, barely holding on. Johnny managed to pass over the snapping point, Luffy having moved to make room for them. Nijiko managed to cross just as the rope snapped, and before long the pirates were swinging through the air at far from comfortable speeds. "Now what?" Johnny shouted over the wind. "Brace for impact, I guess," Luffy replied. "I'll try and slow us down with my legs." Stretching his legs backwards, Luffy reached out and tried to make contact with the side of the mountain. The closer they got, the more worrying the speed became. After all, this was definitely going to hurt. "Nijiko!" Hearing Johnny cry out, Luffy looked downward to see that Nijiko had lost her grip on the rope, but Johnny had grabbed her before she fell. "Great. Are you okay?" Luffy shouted. "Yeah, just peachy," Nijiko shouted. "I'm gonna die." "No you won't," Luffy replied, angrily eyeing the wall. "I'll save us." His legs reached the wall, giving him the sustain he needed. Using his legs the rope slowed, and soon the group reached the wall and hung there quietly. "Are we dead?" Johnny asked. "Does it snow at heaven?" "No, I think we're alive," Nijiko replied, hanging weakly from Johnny's arm. "Can I get some help here?" Luffy reached down and helped her regain her grip, now all three of them hanging off the side of the mountain, fighting against the elements. "How close are we?" Johnny asked weakly. Luffy looked up to see that they were just barely halfway to the top, give or take. "Little over halfway," he replied. "We can do this, we're almost there." Little by little, fighting the fact that their limbs were freezing, the trio did their best to climb. The wind was trying its absolute hardest to stop them, and a few times Luffy felt his frozen fingers lose their grip. But he couldn't fall. No, he wouldn't fall. There was no way he would. "I don't know if I can." Nijiko's voice came weakly from below him. My arms are going to give out." "Don't give up, big sis Nijiko," Johnny shouted. "We're almost there." I, Nijiko," Luffy shouted, still climbing. "I'm not telling Nami you fell. So gather yourself and let's get up this frigging mountain." He couldn't tell what she was thinking, but he didn't hear her complaining anymore. They continued their climb, the end coming closer and closer. Before long, Luffy was able to reach up and grip the edge, pulling himself over and crawling into the snow. Taking a deep breath, Luffy ignored the freezing snow pressed against his chest and turned to reach down, helping Johnny and Nijiko up the side. Both of them sprawled out on the ground as well, panting heavily. "I need more training," Johnny hissed weakly. "My arms are on fire." Nijiko said. We made it though, Luffy said. Now, let's get this done. Taking a deep breath, Luffy struggled to his feet and looked at the castle. Hey, we need a doctor out here. Show yourself. For a moment or two, nothing happened. For a moment, Luffy was terrified there was no one here. Had they really done all of this for nothing, actually? As it turned out, they had not. As Luffy pondered their decisions, the front door to the castle slowly opened, and a pair of eyes watched them from inside. Who are you guys? The voice asked. I'm telling you, we missed the lake. Vivi shouted as Usopp stared down at the map. But where did we take a wrong turn? He demanded. Sanji sighed from outside the sleigh, puffing on his cigarette. We may as well just go back to Big Horn, he said as he watched the environment around them. We've wasted who knows how much time. There's no way that old lady is still out here. Are you sure? Vivi asked. What if she hasn't gotten back yet? We need to worry about ourselves too, Sanji replied. We've gotten ourselves lost in the middle of nowhere. Who knows what kind of stuff is out here? Like those Lapins, Usopp agreed in fright. Vivi didn't know what to do. They had clearly missed their turn, but should they keep looking? Did they need to? Okay, let's go back, she said, sitting back down in the sled. It might get dark soon, so we should go. I think we have bigger problems anyways, Sanji said. Making a face, Vivi turned to look at the cook, who was standing on a nearby ledge looking down. Joining him, both she and Usopp looked down to see a small ship anchored in the bay below them, one with a massive 3 on the side of it. What is that? She asked. Usopp made a face, taking his rifle off of his back and using it to look down. After a few seconds, he screeched. It's the Baroque Works agents we defeated on Little Garden, he shouted. Not wanting to believe him, Vivi wrestled the gun from him and scoped in, looking for herself. Sure enough, Mr. 3 was down below, along with Ms. Golden Week, Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine. Why are they here? Vivi demanded. Why did they follow us? Isn't it obvious? Sanji asked. We pissed them off on Little Garden, now it's personal. What do we do? Usopp cried. We're all so split up, and we're down too, what now? I say we don't do anything, Sanji said, earning a raised eyebrow from both Vivi and Usopp. They don't know we're up here, so let's keep out distance and see what they do. If we can catch them off guard, we can take 1 or 2 of them down. You guys down? I guess, Usopp said. As long as we stay far away from them. Vivi nodded at this, not feeling confident with just the 3 of them. So, as the captain worked to get their sick crew members to a doctor, the first mate chased after the former king with Dalton. On top of all of this, Barkworks was back for a 3rd time and trying to stop them. What could possibly go wrong now?